William Morrow and HarperAudio present The Wedding Witch, a novel by Erin Sterling. Performed by Mary Jane Wells. For Tessa and Holly. Prologue. Last Christmas Eve. Queen's Head Pub, London. Elves really were dickheads. Not the one currently grinning at Bowen from the chalkboard near the pub's entrance, a wee little guy sketched out in red and white, grinning dementedly next to the evening special of venison lasagna and something called Merry Yule Nog. That fella, with his jaunty cap and overly big eyes, seemed like he might need to lay off the caffeine a bit. But tonight, Bowen's grudge was against real elves. The wankers, with their long white robes, mysterious mountain homes in the wilder parts of Scandinavia, and nearly indecipherable language that he had just spent the better part of a bloody week trying to read, only to realise what he'd spent hours poring over in the dusty back room of the British Library was actually a recipe for fucking mead. Something that didn't seem to require more than 100 pages of text. And yet, bastards had better be glad they all fucked off about 500 years ago, he thought darkly, as he sipped his pint and watched passers-by hurry down slick streets as Christmas lights twinkled overhead and cars threw up sheets of freezing water. Over the pub speakers, a singer warbled about chestnuts and open fires just as a group of shoppers burst through the front door, laughing and talking all at once, and Bowen felt his shoulders creeping up closer to his ears. A week in the city was about 6.5 days too long for Bowen's taste. But he had one more little bit of business in London tonight before he could head back to his house, well, hut, for the better word, in the mountains of Wales. It would be freezing and dark and lonely, and he would be far, far more comfortable. Of course, now that this elf thing had turned out to be such a waste of time, he'd have to go back to the drawing board on Declan's spell. But that would be all right. He was always happier when he was working anyway. Thinking of work had Bowen glancing back at his phone. 4:58 p.m. They were supposed to be here at 5, but you never knew with these types. Bowen had dealt with more than one acquirer in his day, humans who sold magical artefacts. It was a shady business, deeply secretive by requirement, and too many of them didn't take the time to actually learn about what it was they were selling. Bowen had once bought a crystal goblet from an acquirer. It had been crafted sometime in the 13th century, and it had the ability to poison any drink within a 50-foot radius. The idiot had been keeping it with his coffee mugs. So, no, Bowen didn't have the highest opinion of humans who meddled in things they didn't understand. But he couldn't deny that they were useful. Unlike witches, they weren't tempted to keep the things they acquired, and there was no history with these kinds of people, no tangled family feud from centuries back that could lead to issues. And the one he was meeting tonight, this TLB Acquisitions Limited, had been especially good. Thanks to their work, for the past year or so, Bowen had gotten his hands on a grimoire no one had seen since 1832, a tarot deck that had once belonged to the sorcerer John Dee, and an album that could cause an outbreak of St. Vitus's dance. All of it done quickly, discreetly, and, yes, fucking expensively, but worth it, as far as Bowen was concerned. Which was why he'd asked for a meeting with T from TLB. Thankfully, it turned out they'd both be in London at the same time. And now, as the clock ticked over to 5, he glanced toward the door. As though Bowen's thought had summoned him, a man strode through the door, jangling a bell overhead. He was wearing a smart suit, his bald head gleaming under the lights, as he shook off an umbrella there in the vestibule. With his shiny shoes and rimless glasses, he looked like a banker, which meant he was almost certainly an acquirer. They all looked like that. Bowen lifted his chin, but the man only glanced briefly at him, before his face broke out into a wide smile as he waved at someone off to Bowen's right.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?